Why did I have to mean about this thing this week?
Is the first boss of the raid. Okay, let's read the overview first. Okay, there's only a placeholder. Damage dealers. Positioning near dormant tainted lashes when targeted with control burn will cause them to activate. Okay. Flame tormented ancient marks several players and plagues the ground they walk on, inflicting shadow damage to players within 15 yards of the location every 1 second. Its target erupts after 6 seconds, inflicting shadow flame damage to players within 15 yards and creating a patch of shadow scorched earth. Okay, so you activate these dormant tainted lashers by going close to them with the control burn. Yo, Velo, thank you for the raid, bro. Ember chart. Charcoal flames linger on the player, inflicting shadow flame damage. Touching a corrupted soil while afflicted will ignite the root and remove 1 stack of the debuff. Players can ignite doom roots to 3 yards and knocking them away. Gnarlroot will take 100% increased damage when afflicted by uprooted agony. Torn from earth, Gnarlroot shrieks in pain, inflicting shadow flame damage to all players within every 5.2 for 20 seconds. The pain immobilizes Gnarlroot, causing him to take. Okay, so sounds like it's a boss that is that takes increased damage when you uproot him. See how we do that. Tortured screams. This is a healing mechanic. Like shadow flame damage to enemies within 300 yards. Okay. Raid-wide damage heal. While it channels potent fertilization. Let's see here. Gnarlroot grows doom roots that absorbs power from earth. Turn on the music. Decreasing his damage taken by 90% and causing him to pulse toxic lore. Shadow flame energy piercing through the earth awakens any dormant tainted lashers. Overpowered with shadow flame, chunks of splintering charcoal fly off his body every 8 seconds. Alright, so he grows some doom roots that absorb power from the earth, so he takes less damage. Then he pulses some toxic lore. The Gnarlroot gains a stack of uprooted agony. See the pain from uprooted agony sends Gnarlroot into a frenzy, causing him to inflict 10% increased damage. This effect stacks each time uprooted agony is approved. Okay, so every time you uproot him, he takes a damage increase, and then he does 10% damage, right? So this looks like you want to, like a boss where you want to pump as much damage as possible into this window where he takes increased damage, and is damageable. And if you do not pump enough damage into this damage window, you're going to be having to play more phases of this guy, and he's going to eventually do more and more damage every single time that happens. I mean, it's a first boss, so it's probably going to be pretty fucking easy. See, tank mechanic. Inflicts high damage and increases shadow flame damage taken. He shoots 5 missiles in rapid succession at the tank. It does damage. And it takes him, so he does 24% increased damage for 34. This effect stacks. Okay, that's the tank swap mechanic. Engage tainted lashes quickly after they cast tainted. The tainted lash is roused by the additional shadow flame, fertilizing its soil. The force of the lash's awakening inflicts shadow flame damage to enemies within 300 yards. Okay. Get aggro from them when they pop out. Charcoal flames linger on the player, inflicting shadow flame damage every 1 second. Touching a corrupted soil while afflicted will ignite the root and remove 1 stack of its debuff. Players can, yeah. Ember Child players can ignite Doom Roots. Okay. Let's check the abilities now. So stage 1. And wait, let me see. And then intermission. And uprooted agony. Okay. So, stage 1. So the boss infuses nearby earth with Shadow Flame, causing it to explode after 3 seconds. See, the blast inflicts Shadow Flame damage to enemies within 3 yards of the blast. Some patches of herb absorbs Shadow Flame energy, spawning dormant tainted lashers. So these spawn in like a dormant state, but they bloom and become active when they are imbued with additional Shadow Flame energy by Shadow Scorched Earth or potent fertilization. Tainted lashes roused by the additional Shadow Flame, fertilizing its soil. The force of the lashes awakening inflicts Shadow Flame damage to enemies within 300 yards. Yeah, so it becomes active. It does damage to the whole raid, but not that much. Your tears, thank you so much, man. So they just do raid-wide damage when they bloom, it looks like. That's how I understand it. The Tainted Lasher spits thorns at the player, inflicting Shadow Flame damage. Embedded thorns bleed the player for physical damage every 1 second, for 10 seconds. This effect stack. Okay, so I imagine that the more lashes that are up, the more bleeds they will spit out at random targets. It reminds me a little bit of the Brackenhide lashers. Very common that the lashers have a bleed mechanic that goes onto random targets. It's a 10-second bleed that's stacks. So you obviously don't want to get overrun by these lashers. That's important. On Mythic, there is a special Tainted Treant that is not in Heroic and Normal. The Tainted Treant releases blazing pollen from its body, inflicting fire damage to enemies within 50,000 yards and conflags them for 6 seconds. So this is a extra ad that looks like that it will only be on Mythic, and it's an interruptible cast. So you obviously do not want to let the Frenzied Flames go off. It is just a massive AoE hit to the whole raid if it does go off. Most likely, well, if you don't interrupt it, you can most likely wipe from this. So just make sure you have a good kick rotation on this bad boy. Tainted Tree and her Scorching Pollen that inflicts fire damage and reduces movement speed of all enemies within 4 yards of the impact. So, dodge. But if you do get hit, you take fire damage and you get movement speed reduction, but it can be dispelled. So you can get saved by your healer if you do fuck up. Krolicus, thank you for Prime as well, bro. The Flame Tormented Ancient. That is the boss, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yes. The boss, even though it says Flame Tormented Ancient, it is called Gnarlroot, but Flame Tormented Ancient is the boss. He marks several players and plagues the ground they walk on. Inflicting Shadow Flame damage to players within 15 yards of the location every 1 second. So you get targeted by this, you do damage around you within 15 yards, and you plague the ground you walk on, which is the Shadow Scorched Earth that you leave behind as well. So after 6 seconds, you will explode, and you create a patch of this if you stand in it. Obviously, you don't want to stand in that, and I think you want to position yourself near the dormant Tainted Lashers. With this, if you get this ability, you want to position yourself on the non-active Lashers to activate them. Let's see here. So that's kind of how it works. Wanted to Charred Embers. Let me see if I can... Where the fuck was that ability again? The Dreadfire Barrage. Gnarlroot shoots 5 missiles in rapid succession. Tank mechanic. It's whatever. This was the Tortured Scream that does damage to the whole raid. And a debuff. You just need to out-heal this. Raid-wide damage. And Shadow Flame Cleave. One shot frontal touch. And there's the intermission. So he goes into a stage during the intermission where he takes 99% reduced damage. And he will activate all of the dormant Tainted Lashers. And then there's some chunks of splintering charcoal that flies off his body every 8 seconds. Not sure exactly what that does. Oh, it's down here. Chunks of splintering charcoal fly off his body. You just touch it. It looks like it's very similar to the first boss. Like that the pieces of his armor flies off and you just touch. Each piece of charcoal that does not hit a player erupts in contact with the earth, inflicting shadow flame damage to players within 100 yards of the impact. Okay, never mind. It's not the same. This is a mechanic that you want to soak. So if you don't soak it, it erupts on contact on the ground, and it does more shadow flame damage to players. Okay, so it does damage to the whole raid instead of only damage to the player soaking it. And so you obviously want to try and soak this. Never mind. It's not the same as the Dragon Boss. I just jumped to conclusion before reading the whole thing. All right. Okay, let's see here. Roots burst forth from the empowered soil, inflicting nature damage to players up to 3 yards and knocking them away. Let me see. These Doom Roots were... Roots burst forth from the empowered soil. Yeah. Okay. I'd imagine that these roots, they will like pulsate a cast time, I'd imagine. Or I'm not sure exactly how, maybe you guys understand it differently, but it looks like there's these Doom Roots that was placed around the boss room. And you can remove that with this Ember Chart, charcoal flame sling on the player. Yeah, so Ember Chart players can ignite the Doom Roots, right? So if you have this Ember Chart debuff, you can ignite the Doom Roots. Since you obviously don't want to get hit by that. The knockback and does quite a lot of damage. Corrupted Soil. Gnarlroot's power seeps into the ground underneath him, inflicting shadow flame damage every 1 second to players within the effect. Additionally, reduces movement speed by 60% and reduced forced movement effects on players within the area. So obviously you don't want to be within the corrupted soil. The deadly. Toxic Loam. Heal. This was the splintering charcoal. Make sure you soak that. And yes, so you soak this splintering charcoal. You get the Ember Chart debuff afterwards, and then you go and you destroy the. Aha, I see. Okay, makes sense. So now it starts making sense. This spits out, you soak it. If you don't soak it, it does raid damage. When you soak it, you get this debuff that does fire damage every 1 second. And it stacks up, I'd imagine. But if you go over a corrupted soil while you Ember Chart, it removes the corrupted soil, destroys this, and removes a stack of this debuff. So soak, clean up, remove your debuff. Okay. The Uproot Agony. Torn from the earth, Gnarlroot shrieks in pain, inflicting shadow flame damage to all players. The pain immobilizes Gnarlroot. Yeah. So, this is the thing. He goes down in the intermission. Boom. He takes reduced damage. You get a lot of piss mechanics. The lashes are active. You gotta do some things. And then he will be torn from the earth. He will be in pain, and he will do a ton of damage to the whole raid that just needs to be healed. So it's like blast and heal, pretty much. Raid damage plus 100% increased damage. This is the bloodlust pop all cooldowns. Make sure you have CDs for this, I'd imagine. Of course, don't know if this is on a timer or if it's percentage-based intermissions or anything like that. But since there is the mechanic that makes him get increased damage every single time he comes out of this, you know, 10% increased damage, it could mean that it's set. So there's a percentage-based intermission that makes him harder and harder, and you play 2 intermissions. It could also be timer-based to the point where you can skip an intermission if you have enough DPS. I just don't know, right? So that's the first boss. First impressions, guys. What do you think? Soaks. You burn with fire. You remove some roots. You activate some lashers. You get 100% increased damage window on the boss. You blast. Pretty simple overall, I think. Obviously, we need to see the boss first, but his first boss, probably not going to be too hard.